fuss about little things like electrification, little things like community consultation.
Adam Giambrone, former city councilor and TTC commissioner. What are you up to now?
So I work right now for the city of Milwaukee and the city of Montreal as their transit advisors.
Nice. And you started in politics very young. At the age of 15 in high school at Harvard Collegiate, you were into politics. What made you want to get into politics from such a young age?
You know, I was interested in a lot of, I guess, public affairs, what was going on, the government. These sort of debates were interesting. So I got involved. I got involved with the NDP in high school. I mean, nothing too serious. I mean, I helped out on some campaigns. I actually didn't join the party until I went to McGill in Montreal, and I joined in 1995 when I was at McGill University.
And speaking of McGill, I know in 1997 you ran in the Montreal riding, and you finished 5th out of 6. When you first ran, was that more or less just to get your feet wet, or was it just, I guess, you actually didn't get a chance of winning at the time?
No, I mean, look, it's interesting because things have changed a lot in Quebec. Today, the NDP are the strongest party in Quebec. They hold, I think, 58 out of the 75 seats, and in fact, in the last election, they swept. So 5 McGill students were elected in the last election, which means that, I mean, there are 5. They were students. So the youngest, I think, was 19. 5 students were elected to Parliament. Similar thing happened in Alberta actually a couple weeks ago with a bunch of very young people elected to the Alberta legislature. When I ran, no, we knew we wouldn't win. It was actually, the election was called in the spring, so May and June, so I was finished school. And I had a job lined up, summer job in July, so it actually worked out pretty perfect that I ran. But no, I knew I wasn't going to win. But we did run a big campaign, the biggest in Montreal, which was good for me because it gave me media attention, which was good, not because it helped me win, because I wasn't going to win, but more from the training and learning about things, and it was a good experience.
And it makes sense. And something about being young. I think being young is always associated with Adam Giambrone. You were one of the youngest councillors at the age of 26. Do you think politics is a young man's game, in your opinion?
I think it's actually, you know, what I've come to, my opinion has sort of formed that it's one of two. I think it's very easy or easier to do when you're young, or coming as a senior, in the sense, or your late 50s, so maybe not a senior citizen, but where you've finished your career. That's because in a lot of cases politics can take away a lot from other parts of your life. So when you're young, you tend not to have a family. You know, you're at the beginning of your career. When you enter politics in the mid-level of your career, say in your mid-30s or 40s, that's when most people are most advancing in their career, getting their promotions. Politics takes that away, and it sort of stunts your career. So if you were doing media, you did politics, it would take you a number of years to get back into media, and so it would be a great experience, but you might find yourself in the middle of 40s not, you know, being whacked back in your career. So whereas if you're in your end of your 50s, say, or you know, you've done your career, you've probably got your house or your apartment paid off, your kids are probably grown, it's a little bit easier. So I sort of see it as the most logical at the beginning, or at the end of your career is probably the smartest thing to do.
What advice would you want to give to people trying to get into politics?
Well, I think one of the things, probably the best way to do this is get involved in campaigns. I mean, to really know, at the heart of it, there's a lot of reasons to do politics, right? You want to make change. There's something you see that needs to be fixed. So that's a good reason to do politics. But then politics is a lot about the mechanics, like how you get elected, what happens, and that the best way to get an experience is to work on an election campaign. There's one this fall, and actually there's usually one every year or two. So there's lots of opportunities, and it'll give you a good experience as to you know, what the actual mechanics of getting elected are, because they're two different things. Some people are very good at being elected, and I think a person like Rob Ford, someone I don't agree with, but who is a very good campaigner, right, who is probably a better campaigner than he is a politician in the sense of doing things to get things done. He's good at getting elected, but he's not necessarily good at administration. In some ways, they're two different skills. Getting elected is one thing, running a government or being part of a government is another one.
And you know, such a great segue, this TTC streetcar just passed by, and you used to be a TTC commissioner. Talk about that job. I remember you secured an $8 billion, I think, for the funding. You got $8 billion funding. That was obviously a big deal. Talk about that position and how important was it for you and how much it helped your career.
I mean, I think for me, TTC was an amazing opportunity. It's an incredible corporation. In Toronto, transit is very important. It's part of the debate we always have. In fact, we're having it today. Scarborough Subway, do you do more LRTs? So, you know, everything about it, there's a story, and there's stories in today's paper about the almost every day. So it's one of those, it's a large corporation, 14,000 employees, operating on a combined budget of about $2.7 billion. So it's a big responsibility, both from a corporate perspective as well as a civic perspective. And it was an excellent training ground for me. And it really set up my career, which is in public transit. So we talk about politics as a career. Probably politics is not a career for a lot of people in the sense that you don't do it for 35 years. If you look at some people do, but most people do it, and we saw Peter MacKay, who just retired, I think he did it for 14 years. So it isn't a short period, but most people's career now are going to be 35 years. So if you think about Peter MacKay or an Adam Giambrone, the time that they're doing other things other than being an elected official is probably going to be much longer in total, no matter how successful they are, right? They're just not going to be, even Stephen Harper, I think even if he is re-elected this fall, he will probably only spend a total of, my math might be wrong, 16 or 17 years. So if you think about it, most of his adult life is going to be doing something else. And so you want to think about that from a political perspective as well. And TTC gave me an opportunity to train me, and I was able to then use it to go on to do other things. In my industry now, if you ask me, I would tell you it's public transit.
And do you plan on ever getting back into politics? Do you have aspirations of maybe being an MP or MPP? Do you ever plan on getting back into?
So I was the national president for the NDP. I did that. I worked at the federal level. Look, I'm in my 30s. I always say I've got over 30 years to go before I qualify for Canada pension. So sure, maybe at one point, but at this point I'm focused on transportation, which is also very political, as we've talked about securing $8 billion in funds,
huge.
Dealing with subway, LRT. Those are the nice thing about a transportation from my perspective is you get to do the transportation part, and you get to do the politics, because so much of it about politics in general, and so in some ways it combines it, and that works out really well.
And one question I forgot to mention, going back to TTC, there's a lot of complaints now about the TTC with the delays and the stoppages. What advice would you give the TTC riders, and what, I guess, could be changed in the city?
Well, I think one of the things we have to remember is that the TTC is a great low budget cost service. If you think about it, you think about when you go flying, you have the choice. You can choose a more expensive Air Canada, or you can choose like Sunwing Vacations, right? You get less room on Sunwings, maybe not as fancy things, but it's a lot cheaper. The TTC is the lowest cost operator in North America. It receives the least government funds in the developed world of any transit system. So Europe, North America, Japan, Australia, all these countries, they fund their transit system more. So from a taxpayer perspective, we should be pretty happy because we're getting very good value. As a rider, on the other hand, what that very good value means is that you're in cramped buses, right? You're in older vehicles. You don't have as many kilometers of LRT or subway because all those things cost money. And so you look at what we spend per rider, it's a lot less than any other system in North America, but what that does do is it means that you don't get as high quality service. So that's a decision that we make. Individually we can't make that, but in who we elect, if you want to give the TTC more money, now they have to be efficient with it, all that, but if you look at it, if you're in New York City gets about 40% more per rider. So, Montreal gets about 30 or 40% more riders. So you just imagine what that potentially could do. And then we have to make a decision as riders and taxpayers. So, that's what I would say to people. Yeah, the TTC has to continue to do better. And, it's getting better in some ways. It's got some challenges. But we also have to recognize that a low-cost carrier is not going to offer as good quality as another one that gets higher funding like in other cities.
You answered some great questions right there. And we're going to end this on a more joyful note. So we're just going to throw you some photos and just talk about some tweets you tweeted. So my first question is, Rome Pete is your uncle.
Yeah.
And you were very excited when he got on Twitter. Why was that?
Well, it's funny because he's actually he's one of only 2 family members, and he's an older guy. So my brother's on Twitter as well, but that's not too surprising. So he's, it's weird. He tweets about soccer because he's a big Italian soccer fan, and also opera, which isn't something I follow, but so that was just kind of fun having him on Twitter.
And there was a cartoon you saw. If somebody has 0 followers, but they retweet, does that count as a retweet?
Well, right, and of course that goes back to the whole idea of whether when a tree falls in the forest and no one hears, does it make a sound? So those sort of things are just, it's funny because the whole debate about Twitter is, what are we using it for? Some people, especially politicians, really use it, but you can tell when they're really really using it, whether they incorporate it. And to be honest with you, I've left off a little bit of Twitter recently because I don't have the same role. So when at TTC, you know, I'd want to communicate with you on Twitter, get that information out. I'll tweet a few things if I see it more interesting, but it's a little bit different. So it's a particular medium, and you need to know how to use it. And so just sitting there retweeting, that's not, it's a conversation, right? And so, and I think a lot of, especially politicians, don't get it, right? They send all this stuff out. Some people really do. Tony Clement is a good example. He's a Tory, but like he has a ton of followers, but he'll engage, you'll just see him like all his stuff on, he's a big music fan, and like, but he goes back and forth. So if you tweet him, he'll engage with you on it. Whereas some other politicians, and Mayor Ford is a good example, he never actually responded to anybody on Twitter. Like it was always his staff, you could tell. And so that's, Twitter's a particular medium, and for me, like you've got to understand that, and it's just part of using it whether you like it or not.
Use it very well.
Well, thanks.
Okay. And I got some photos here. Sure. So this was you on a trip you went to back in the day. So show the camera and tell us about this trip you went on.
You know, this is, so I'm an archaeologist by training.
Oh, nice.
And my specialty is North Africa and the Middle East. Wow. So I'm in Sudan every year, virtually every year. This picture is taken at the University of Khartoum in the late 1990s. At the center of the photo is my friend Arif. And the great thing now, actually, and then this is another Arif, I'm actually, well, 3 of the people on these photos I'm on WhatsApp with, because as you probably know, for people like here, a lot of people have free texting. There you're paying per text. So, you know, you can actually now with WhatsApp, this is, I think I'm probably about 19 in this photo. And we're hanging out, these are all University of Khartoum students, U of K, and we're hanging out there because I was in Khartoum for, I think at that time, 4 months at one point. So
iconic photo.
It's kind of funny actually, yeah, it's a good photo.
I got another one here. Congratulations, you got your master's this year, right? Or was it last year?
Just last year.
Talk about how, I guess, important that was to you and how happy you were to get that.
So, you know, I'd gone back, this is I think at Hart House, and I'd gone, U of T. So I went back 2 years ago now to do an MBA at Rotman's. Actually, it was a joint degree, an MBA from the University of Toronto, Rotman's, and another executive MBA from the University of St. Gallen in Switzerland. So there was 38 of us, I think 36 of us, and I graduated. So yeah, it was kind of interesting, you know, going back to school. So I'd done graduate work at U of T. I went to McGill, and I'll tell you, going back to school is really interesting because when I was first in school, you know, they give you an assignment like you've got here. You go out and do it. You have no questions. When you're going back to school after being out, say, for like 15 years, you know, you've got a very different attitude, and you've got like, you want to say like, no, I don't know if stupid is the right word, but like that question makes no sense for the essay. I'd rather write about it. So in fact, I got a lot of grades that were probably lower. I remember a couple like a B-, which isn't a great grade. And what the comment was, you know, this is really well written, well researched, but you didn't answer the question. And it's because because once you're out of school, you sort of get used to doing things your way, or in a corporate world like I just wouldn't follow in that same way. So I just answered the question I wanted to, which wasn't actually necessarily the question. So instead of maybe getting an A or an A- or a B+ even, you know, I'd get knocked down to something like a B-. I rationalized going, but that's the question I wanted to answer. It was mostly about public transit because you use your industry as when you do an MBA, but that was one of the things that was an interesting perspective going back, because again, you're not used to it once you leave school.
Most definitely. Makes sense to me. Got 5 more to go, so you gotta stick in with me.
We'll speed it up.
We gotta speed up. Rick Mercer, right? That was a funny photo. Was this like, I guess, a comedy thing you guys did together?
We actually, you can find it on YouTube. And Rick, they approached us about, you know, Rick Mercer. He goes around the country doing these crazy things every week. And this was, we taught him how to drive a bus, drive a streetcar, and drive a subway. So I was with him throughout the whole thing. I didn't do I'm not a TTC trainer. So I've driven a bus, I've driven a streetcar, and I've driven a a subway car. I'm not allowed to do it in regular service because I don't have the certificate. It takes 28 days, so it's a serious thing. So I could drive a bus on TTC property. You know, I could drive a streetcar on TTC, not on the street. So you don't have to worry. No one was put at risk. Neither could Rick. But we spent the day together, and you know, it's actually a pretty, because he's a funny guy. So if you look it up on YouTube, it's kind of I think a 5-minute segment. So it's kind of a neat little picture.
We'll be sure to watch that tonight. We got a roll here. So we got something. What were you looking at this day? It looks pretty cool. You seem deep in your thoughts. What were you looking at?
You know, I don't know exactly. That's John Barber, who was with the Globe and Mail. I think that was an event for putting bike racks on buses, which is something I unveiled, was something I championed, I should say. Actually, before I was in charge, I was the deputy or the vice chair of the TTC, and I believe that's at Yonge Dundas Square. But I think that has to do with putting bike racks on TTC buses, which is something we rolled out at 2006, 2007.
Sounds pretty cool to me. You got tired here today? You got tired that day? This is on, you're on vacation, right? How tired?
No, actually, this is
work,
this is funny that you know. This is actually in an archaeological dig. I believe. I'm thinking that. No, actually, sorry. It took me a moment. I was looking at my insignia going, I thought it might be something from when I was doing some archaeology out in Alberta. But no, this is on the Inca Trail in Peru.
Wow, you went to, wow, that's great.
And so it takes 3 days. I think you go through about 45 kilometers. The Inca civilization has spectacular ruins. And so yeah, I mean, it's a pretty tiring thing you do. At some point, you're going straight up in the Andes. And it's all stairs that they built like 600-700 years ago, and it's still there. And at one point, like, you go literally up 1,000 stairs. Like, I'm not exaggerating.
Yeah.
So we were, you know, you're sleeping out, you're camping, and I think I was taking advantage of a little bit of a nap. So that was that.
And I got 2 more to go.
Okay.
What's this? A stick? Is this and was it water you're drinking from?
Yeah.
Oh,
so,
that's amazing.
You know, this is actually on the same trip.
Same trip, yeah.
So the Inca Trail is in the Andes, and this is all in Peru, of course. This is in the Amazon River, and this is one of our guides at the time was showing us the different plants and animals. And this is apparently the First Nations people use this quite a bit. If you cut this vine, it grows pretty quickly. It basically is filled with water, and so you can, and it's pure because the plant has filtered the water, right? So it's like opening up a coconut.
Really?
You know, you can drink the water from a coconut, and here you slice this root, if you know what it is, and like you get, I don't know, probably half a liter of water out of this thing. So that was pretty cool. But that's where we learn, like, you go through the Amazon, and I think pretty much every insect and every animal is trying to kill you. Like, there are the bugs, they're all like, you really have to be careful. You don't see me, you see me on the top there, but I think we're wearing big boots, pants, because otherwise I think you basically get like stung and bitten. And of course there's the piranha fish in the Amazon. So yeah, that's pretty cool.
That's quite deadly. So let me hold these straight. I got 1 more to go. And was this I guess an event you were doing, or were you playing were you acting for something?
Yeah, so this was at Dufferin Grove Park, which is a park in the west part of Toronto. It's, well, actually where I grew up and where I live now.
Wow.
It's a very active park. So this is a park that has like a bake oven where people can come and bake pizza. Like, you could bring your pizza or bread on, like, in the middle of the afternoon if you know the schedule, and bake it in there. They've got an ice rink. And so what they were doing is, they also have a theater company called Clay and Paper Theater, which made these, I guess they're kind of a puppet, a weird puppet, but we were, I was the chair of the TTC, so they made me a bus to ride, and we were actually on skates there, and I think it was mostly for kids, but I think you can see one of the other ones around there. So yeah, that was one of those, they had a whole bunch of people going around in these puppet type things. So
wow. Amazing photos from Mr. Giambrone. Thank you so much for your time.
My pleasure.
Where can people find you on social media so they can always
I'm on Facebook. You know, I'm Adam Giambrone. Easy to find me. I'm Adam_Giambrone on Twitter, LinkedIn, WhatsApp. I'm on basically all of them, and they all come to my BlackBerry.